Hi, welcome to Hey Parents, Let's Chat. Today we're going to have a conversation with Akaila about how to survive those teenage years. And so I hope it's helpful and I hope you enjoy. Hi, welcome to Hey Parents, Let's Chat. I am Jess Hunt and today I am with my friend Akaila. And I just wanted to start out this video chat with a warning. I do have my dog Sai right here at my feet, and he's being so super good, so I didn't have the heart to move him. So if you hear like a little moaning and groaning or even snoring, that's Sai. And so we wanted to have a conversation today about how to survive those teenage years. And we're going to talk about some strategies, some do's and don'ts. But before we jump into that, let's just have a quick chat with Akaila and find out what sort of experience you have with children.
Sure. So I started working with kiddos as a teenager, did a lot of babysitting, and then I went to college and ended up starting with my teaching degree. I've worked with preschoolers for a couple of years and then went over to teaching kindergarten and first and second. I've worked with students in summer school through special education and Title I, and I have my own two charming children, a tween and a teen, so I am still working to survive this teenage phase. But I also volunteer through a couple of different organizations, so I have worked with some older teens on a volunteer basis.
Beautiful. Excellent. I have to say that when going through parenting, the only thing I really heard about was those terrible twos and the terrible threes and how awful that stage is, right? And I think we've all heard that. And then I became a parent and I went through those stages, and then I heard about the dreaded teen years, and then I lived those dreaded teen years, and I was like, those toddler years are a piece of cake compared to the teenagers, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about like how to really survive those teenage years. Have you learned any of like the do's and don'ts so far that worked for you? Like that really stick out in your mind? Like what would be a do and a don't that would?
So a lot of my do's are, let's get them to be independent. Let's give them the opportunity to go and do the things that are of interest to them. Let them go and try out a lot of different opportunities and experiences. One of my big don'ts, I try not to invade a lot of their personal, private things. So if somebody has a diary or I don't go through my children's phones all the time. I do have access to their online presence, and I'll go and spot check it. But I do think that privacy is something that we need to give our teens and tweens within reason. So, like, we have one social media account where they can connect with their kids, and I don't go through and read every message, but I'll spot check it and kind of see what kind of responses they're giving. And then my other big do is, it's okay for you to make mistakes. Let's go back and see how we can fix it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, and I agree with you on the privacy thing. But when it comes to like phones and technology, I made sure that my kids knew that there were going to be random checks of your phone. And let me tell you, they did spur some interesting conversations.
Absolutely.
Based on what I found. I learned some new things that I wish I probably hadn't have learned. But it actually, it kept my kids on their toes. They knew that, I learned early on when it came to technology, that you can't, in my opinion, police everything with their technology, because you literally will go insane, like trying to keep up with them, because as soon as you keep up with them, they've come out with something new that you now have to figure out. There's like a new platform or a new, TikTok comes out and like you can't keep up with it. Not only that, but they'll learn to create aliases.
Yes.
And right, and
they're not experience,
right? Like they're pretty smart. So rather than trying to outsmart them, I decided that it was best with technology to teach them how to be kind, decent human beings, and what's expected, and what's going to get you arrested. And let's be honest, if you're not going to say it to someone's face, then you should not be saying it. online or with your social media. And
Sending
random
it
checks.
through text. Shouldn't be doing that either, you know.
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Or is it Snap? So I don't know this one very well, but Snapchat.
The Snapchat, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
sending
savvy
snaps.
with that.
Yeah.
But I like if it, even if it says it's going to delete in a certain amount of time, you got to know somebody can screenshot that.
Oh yeah.
And it can still end up in a world of trouble.
Oh, absolutely. And that was a message I've told my kids all along. Nothing ever is deleted and goes away. And so, like, I made sure that even though I wasn't, like, invading their privacy, they knew I would be doing random checks.
Yep.
And bottom line with technology, in my mind, is just teach them how to be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Teach them how to be kind human beings, you know, and we basically survived that. We did have some hiccups that I learned a lot about. But overall, we survived when it came to technology. I feel like when getting into those teenage years, as long as you're teaching the kids to be decent, kind human beings on tech, then you really just want to not try to police it, in my mind. I also found that when going through the teenage years, I personally I always taught my kids to be independent, as you had mentioned. And I always wanted my kids to be comfortable and competent as independent young adults. For instance, driving. There were lots of parents that would not let their kids drive in snow. I was one of those parents that as soon as it snowed, I'm like, let's go driving. And let's go to the Hannaford parking lot and figure out how to, like, speed up and put the brakes on and how to do all of those things safely. Because when my kids went out driving, I did not want the added stress of worrying about them. I wanted to teach them how to be safe under all weather conditions and under all circumstances. So, like, if they weren't comfortable driving in the city, we went into the city. Yeah. Exactly. And so...
Well, I think that touches on what you and I talked about in our other two videos about talking to kids and giving them the experiences so that they know what to expect and how to react to them appropriately when they're then going to do it on their own, which is a big thing that I think is important. So I'm going to go back to technology just for a minute and say when my children first got their phone, we did it because they have a long walk from their bus stop to the house and we don't have a landline. So a phone was required. When they got that phone, we spent a lot of time with them initially and saying, this is what we do expect, this is what we don't expect, this is how we convey that. So we talk about it a lot, but then that goes into what you're talking about with your driving. You're not comfortable with this. I need you to learn how to be comfortable with this because that's the reality of where we live. You know, so you talking about going and taking them into the city, you know, there's a good chance we're going to be going in and you need to be able to know how to navigate that safely. And if you can't navigate that safely, what are your next steps to get you out of that situation? So really important for them to experience it with somebody they trust somebody that they know, so they also know how to handle it when they're on their own and what problems can come up.
Yeah.
We were actually riding in the car yesterday, and my youngest, who is a little girl, she is 12, she said, how do you know when you're driving whether you should stop and help somebody or not? And so she's only 12, but we're kind of starting driver's ed at this stage of things because I would say to her, if it's a man by themselves, you don't stop. But if it's a family, I probably wouldn't stop unless, like, there were kids on the side of the road and, like, maybe offer to let them sit in the vehicle to be safe. But then I might also say I might stay behind them and I would call 911 or call a wrecker for them. But we don't get out and put ourselves at risk to help somebody else, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
So just starting those conversations early.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember having those conversations with my daughter especially because, you know, she would ask and I'd be like, well, or we've been driving by together and she's like, well, how come you didn't stop? And I'm like, because it's just the two of us.
Right.
And it's a man. And so we've had those conversations and I've told her if I was by myself, it doesn't matter who it is, I'm not stopping.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm with somebody else, then I am more likely to stop. And I certainly wouldn't want her to ever
Right.
stop if she's ever by herself, ever. But if she's with a group of friends, then that's a little bit of a safer situation.
It depends on who you're with.
Yep.
You've got to know your circumstances and understand what your abilities are to
Yep.
help in that situation, and how you can get help for that person without endangering yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Yeah, that's definitely some really good advice. So, do you have any other thoughts on teenagers? I definitely have some that I have on my mind, but I want to give you a chance to share with everyone watching, like, what your thoughts are.
So, as I said before, I think it's important for them to try things out and be independent. That being said, I also know that they are going to make mistakes. I expect them to make mistakes. And actually, I really want them to make the mistakes, because that allows me the opportunity to go through with them how they fix whatever it is that they've made a mistake on. So, for example, our oldest made a not so great choice at school, and he came home and he talked with me about it, and it took us a while to process it, probably a good day or two, to really get down to the crux of what had happened. And I was able to say, okay, now that you've shared everything with me about what's happened, what are you going to do about this? How do you make this right? And really having him think through what he needed to do to fix it with other people, and how we were going to hold him accountable. This may not be a popular thing, but we do kind of let them think about, what should your punishment be for the choice that you've made? I say that as like having a 12 and a 15-year-old. That is not somebody at 17 or 18 that's going out and possibly putting themselves at risk for drinking and driving,
right,
doing drugs. Those things are much bigger. We're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very fortunate in that the choice that was made was not something that was going to be a life or death situation,
Mm-hmm.
but it was an opportunity for them to go back and fix it up. And I went with him to help make things right. And, after we were done, he got really upset. And I said, listen, I'm so proud of you for being able to go and talk to this person and fix it and make it right. So what do you think needs to happen next? And, he's like, I don't think I should have access to this. I think that I might need to lose out on these privileges. And I'm like, you know what? That's a little harsher than what I was going to give you. But if you think that's appropriate, that's where we're going, buddy. And to me, that just shows a level of maturity, a level of independence in recognizing I made a mistake, I've gone to make it right, and now I have to live with the consequences.
Wow. Yeah. That's an awesome example. And as I'm listening to you, I'm kind of curious as to how you keep such great open lines of communication with your teenager, because there's lots of teenagers that are just like, they become clamshells. And they're, not going to talk. They're not going to listen. And so how do you keep such great communication open with your kids?
I have a good sense of humor, and I will joke with them about anything and everything. We spend a lot of time together in the vehicle, going to various activities. So I do find with my oldest that if he's riding shotgun, he can say things not looking at me, so we're not face to face, it's not confrontational, and I can say, hey, talk to me about, bring up whatever the subject is, and he's usually pretty open about it, but we've always been pretty open all through growing up. If they have questions, I try to answer them as factually as I can that is appropriate for them to know at that point. My daughter, she's really into animals, so we'll go out and, like, for example, we'll go to a farm that we spend a lot of time at, and we'll sit in the pasture, and we'll just be sitting side by side talking about the different animals that are going by and giving them scratches and love when they come by. And that really has opened up the opportunity for her to say to me, hey, Mom, can I tell you about? So having opportunities for me to be alone with them gives them that sense of safety, but also knowing that they all along have been able to come with things to me. And yeah, I might judge them for making some poor choices, but I've also been really, really supportive in helping them fix things.
I think that there's a difference between judging one of your kids and judging them lovingly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because, I mean, I know in our family, like, we are very judgy of each other, but we're very judgy in a very loving way.
Dude, what were you thinking? Holy heck.
And I say that now that my kids are older. When my kids were in the throes of their teenage years, because my kids now are 22 and 20, it was not always super lovey and friendly. And let me tell you right now, I had one teenager that was way more challenging than another. And I do agree with you that when you have opportunities one-on-one where you're not having direct eye contact, like driving in the car or, you know, stacking wood or, you know, dealing with animals, as you suggested, those activities really facilitate moments of, you know, conversations where it doesn't have to be a sit down, let's have eye contact, which can be so intimidating.
Even as adults.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But not only that, but when you're engaged in an activity, it allows you to have distractions or little breaks from the conversation that are necessary, because it might allow one of you to regroup your composure or be thinking about what you want to say next or what question you might want to ask. Whereas if we're sitting here having a conversation, we don't have those little extra distractions that can sort of facilitate those moments, which allow for a break in any tension that might be happening. So driving in the car or, you know, with animals or cooking, I have found is a great, you know, or physical activity like stacking wood or anything that might need to be done.
For a walk.
Yep, absolutely. And so here is... you know, there's lots of parents, I think, that might experience the clamshell or the moodiness, the roller coaster. And I always try to sort of, especially when it comes to moms, because moms go through hormones with pregnancy, right? And we deal with the hormones more than dads do. And so I don't know if you remember what you went through with your pregnancy or labor and delivery and the hormones that happen afterwards, but I remember feeling like completely uncomfortable with myself, completely like not even truly myself or even not right. And I knew it was because I had a hormone imbalance going on. And so I try to remind myself of that when I think of teenagers and their roller coaster, because they are really, and I wish I had thought more of this when I was in the middle of raising my teens, because I think when you're in the middle of it, which is why I love to do these videos, because I'm a little bit more objective now, but when you're in the middle of it, in the throes of it, you are not objective. You're emotional because you're the parent and you're trying to deal with this, like it could be an out of control teenager, it could be just an emotional teenager, and you're trying to figure out how to parent the best way that you can. And if you're stuck in the middle of it, you're not often being objective or thoughtful, or you're just being too reactive and impulsive. And so looking back, I wish I had recognized more, with more empathy, what the kids were going through, because they were not always comfortable with themselves, with how they were feeling, with their mood swings, their impulsivity, and then they've got all these social, you know, burdens put on them as well, and then, you know, not doing well in school. Holy crap, I am already stressed out and I'm an adult talking about it. Like, wow.
The social burdens that we don't even see, those underlying currents that are going on that we aren't privy to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I find that it's better not to expect that the whole conversation is going to happen in one sitting. I do find that I can go, you know, we'll be driving down the road and we'll have talked about something the previous day, and I can say, so I've been thinking about what we were talking about, and you mentioned that this was happening. You handled it like this, and I kind of wonder if there could have been another way that you could have had it out, or another way to be inclusive of somebody. How could you have handled that differently? But sometimes you've got to give them that break to kind of work through it, because you don't know if it's the hormones that are going a little bit crazy during that first conversation, and maybe you come back to it a little bit later. They're more capable and more ready to engage because you've ripped off the Band-Aid that first
I
time.
think that's excellent advice, because I think that we can all recognize when we're talking to our kids when they have that shutdown moment where they're like, okay, garage door's closed. I am no longer talking to you about this. But that doesn't mean that it's over forever.
Right.
You can revisit it. And sometimes even just dropping that nugget just lets them know that they have to be prepared for that follow-up conversation and they need to be thinking about it. And that way they're not bombarded with an issue and they've had some time to think about it. And that, I think, is really helpful advice with talking with kids. And one of the things that I really want parents with teenagers to know, oh my gosh, this is really hard, but you don't ever want to give up on them. I feel like when looking back at the teenage years, you don't remember what you were fighting about. You don't. It's kind of like childbirth and pain, right? You don't remember the pain, but you remember the outcome. And so teenagers are the same way. They might look back on their teen years and they might not remember what the fights were about, but they will remember whether you were always there for them or not. Whether you were always there for them or not. That's huge, huge, huge. Like, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to be idiots.
They have to. They're teens. They're taking what we have been teaching them through their toddler and school age years, and they're trying to apply it in their own lives. And listen, I as adults still make those mistakes. I don't read a social cue the way that I should have. I don't read the room the way I should have. And sometimes it's like, oh, I really messed that up. I'm going to have to go back and fix that. And it's so much easier to do when they've got somebody beside them that is supportive, that is there for them, that's rooting for them.
What if they don't want to?
What if they don't want to?
Make it right. Done. I'm done. I am not dealing with this, and you cannot make me. Like, I'm already embarrassed enough. I'm not going to deal with that. What are you going to do?
I get that, buddy. But you know what? It's my responsibility as a parent to teach you how to recover from a situation like this. And I'm going to give you some time. If you need to take a break in your room, if you need to go outside and, play whatever sport for a while, you need to go run on, why don't you do that? I'm going to touch base with you in 3 hours, 2 hours, and we'll continue the conversation. I get you need a break right now, but we will be continuing the conversation, and we will find a way to make it right. And then if they can't follow through with you after you've given them that grace, that space, then that's an opportunity to start losing some privileges.
Yeah.
Like natural consequence privileges. I'm not going to just take everything all at once. It's going to be, and I never, ever, ever take social opportunities away because they need to know how to navigate with their friends, things that are still going on. We need to deal with it. But if they're part of a sports team, they still go to those practices. If they go to, so my daughter goes to a riding lesson, I think that that's something that's really, really important to her self-esteem. And I'm not willing to sacrifice her self-esteem, her sense of caring for someone else, doing for someone else in order to fix a situation. However, there might not be the opportunity for you to hang out on the phone later on in the evening. There might not be the opportunity for you to go and watch TV. You might not get to go and do some of the, like this summer when we're doing a lot of swimming, you might not be able to join us at the beach, and I'm really sorry. But once we figured this out and we've put it right, you definitely will have the opportunity to come and do these things with us.
Yeah,
So,
I have heard a lot of parents who are like, how could you send them to the championship game or to the end of the season game, or how could you send them to that game because they did this? And I was like, I'm not going to take away their sports. That's their responsibility. They've committed to a team.
Right.
Like, how could I do that? Like, that's not a reward for them. That is part of the commitment that they made.
And it teaches a work ethic, which
absolutely.
we need them to take forward
Yeah.
into the workforce. Unfortunately, work ethic isn't really strong with some individuals.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think that once you've made a commitment, you have to have them and encourage them to follow through on that regardless. And I agree with you. I don't think that taking away something they've already committed to is part of a consequence. But I do believe in accountability.
Yes.
I had a situation with one of my darlings.
And you have to remind yourself that they are your darlings, because
oh,
there are
my
days you're like, holy
gosh,
sweet love, and I am gonna throttle you.
There absolutely
I love
were.
them, but I'm gonna cry.
No, absolutely. We were together, and he was driving, and we went into my appointment, and he thought he was being funny. Oh, he always thought he was being funny. And he hit the sign. There was a sign for the business, right? And he just nudged it, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And it went from this to that. I'm like, "You cannot." And okay, I don't know how many times you've ever been in your life where you're trying to discipline, you're trying to be super strict, and you're laughing your ass off inside your head. Oh my God. And I thought, I think that he expected that of me, to be in one of these laughing my butt off moments. This was not one of those moments. And I was like, because this is a small business. They don't want to have to come fix this sign. So anyway, I went in for my appointment, and I explained to him that he was going to have to go talk to these people. And he was going to have to explain to them what happened. And so he wasn't going to do it. Refuse. And I was like, yeah, you are. And so let time go on. And in the meantime, I had made a phone call to that business, and I'm like, Miss So-and-so, just wanting you to know, can you be on board with me here and play like the badass when he calls or walks in, or however he was going to do it? And she's like, oh, I'm all over that. She was like, totally. And this is why, I love it when it takes a village, and it's not just moms doing it. And so anyway, I gave him time. I said, you're going to have a couple days where you're going to figure out when you're going to go into that business and when you're going to explain to them. I said, this isn't going to be an easy phone call. You're going to walk in, you're going to make eye contact, and you're going to own what you did. And he did. He did. I followed up with that business, and I'm like, did he ever make that phone call? She's like, oh yeah, and thank you for letting him do it, because she had a ball. She totally
But you just said something that I think is really important. You said, however he's going to communicate with them. So that's something we do in our family too. How are you going to communicate fixing this mistake? You can call, you can go show up. We talk about the different ways that you can make things right. So that really, it's giving them some forced choice and fixing things up.
I know. I made him go in. I probably should have said you could call, but I didn't want him to take the easy way out, because I knew he would. In some kids, this is we, as parents, we have to figure out what is best for your kid and what kid needs what. If this was my daughter, she would have been mortified, and a phone call would have been way above and beyond what she would have done. But with my son, I knew he would have taken the easy way out. I knew he would have made the phone call. And so I was like, no, dude, you're going in. Anyway, holding the kids accountable, I think, is super important. And however creative way you can do it, I think as soon as you let some things slide, they're really willing to let lots of things slide. So you kind of have to find a way to be creative to make them be accountable, but I do think it's super important. And this is where, consistency, so that they know and they trust that you're going to hold them to it, I think is super important.
Well, you asking that earlier, if they refuse. Toddler years and up, it's been, what are you going to do? How are you going to fix it? And I've always been consistent in saying, you get some choice in how you deliver the message. You get your choice in, thinking in kindergarten, somebody threw sand. I don't know which one of them it was. But one of the kids threw sand at another child because they had something they wanted. How do you fix it? And for that child, it was drawing a picture as opposed to going in and talking to them. 6 years old, 7 years old, I can't go into your, first grade classroom and make sure you make it right. But I can help you make that note or that picture to show you're sorry. Let the teacher know that it's in the bag and that he should give it to him. That's how we make things right. They knew early on that I was going to hold them accountable, and it really wasn't a choice. They had to do the right thing.
Yeah, and so if as a parent we're consistent, they're going to come to expect that.
Yep.
And that's only going to be more helpful in, setting the pattern that they have come to expect.
Yeah. And that I pray that they continue to exhibit as they become young adults and become independent from the home.
And so let me just talk about that for a second to all of the people, including you, who are in the middle of those teenage years or, about to go through it or at the tail end of it. Wow, it does end. Like, all of those roller coasters, it really does.
I promise.
No, I really do. I really do. And as long as you are continuing to invest, I call it front loading in your investment. If you just really keep investing in your kids, supporting them, knowing that you're there for them, keeping consistent with your expectations, and keeping those communication lines open, holding them accountable, all of those things, as hard as it is, and believe me, like, they're the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. Like, I could spend we need a bottle of wine for the conversation I'm going to have if we're going to talk about all the things that my kids went through. But if you stick with them, it pays off. I mean, my little darlings in these pictures are young adults that I love spending time with. I love one-on-one time, taking them out to dinner. We have Sunday afternoon cookouts in the summertime. They come over with their girlfriends, whatever, boyfriends, and they just chill out and relax. And it's so much more comfortable because we don't have the stresses. They are now pretty much financially independent. I say my daughter's still in college, but
so she may need a little more guidance for a little longer.
When I say financially independent, she's right. But they pretty much, like, they pay for their own vehicles, they pay their own bills, we pay for college, but my point is, it will absolutely pay off. You will end up with wonderful little adults. You just got to stick with them.
I do see those glimmers. I do. When they're not always frequent, but I do see those glimmers as I see them. My son and I were out for a walk, and he said something the other day. I just kind of cocked my head and I was like, "Ooh, you're a young man I want to continue spending time with."
Oh, I just those love moments awesome? Yeah.
It is.
It is. I remember I had one of those moments where we were going through Walmart. I'm going to give both of my kids examples because it was Hannaford or Walmart, and this was back when self-checkout was just becoming a thing. And my daughter was all about, oh my gosh, let's go do the self-checkout. Can I?
Wanted
and I'm
to
like,
scan it.
Sure. This is you practicing to be a cashier someday. Yeah. We have no idea. You could end up as a summertime job being a cashier, right? We'll go practice it. Going into Walmart with my son, exact same scenario. Self-checkout's just coming out. And his response was, why would you ever go to self-checkout when you are now putting someone out of a job?
Oh, there's a perspective I hadn't thought of.
This was when they were first coming out. I hadn't even thought about that. And that's what his response was. And I was like, dude, this is really cool. Like, I really love that you just came out with that.
Yes.
And so we did have glimmers through all of those roller coasters of hell, because it really is. And I remember telling my kids very distinctly, your teenage years, you're going to be crazy, hormones, make idiotic decisions, and your only job is to survive without any major life-changing, life-altering mistakes. Getting hooked on drugs. Having a car accident, where one of your buddies dies. Like, we cannot, your job is to survive without any life-altering mistakes. Little tiny mistakes we can work through.
I'm 5 years through with one.
Yeah.
I've got 5 more to go. And Lord help us, I hope we can do it.
Yeah.
I know we can.
Absolutely.
He's got a good head on his shoulders. The other one, she'll probably be a relative breeze because she's a really good girl. Don't have those worries for her.
Yeah.
But,
I don't know.
I'm holding on.
Yeah. So do you have any other advice for parents out there when it comes to teenagers? I did want to tackle a quick conversation. Oh yeah, totally. About sex. Let's just how do you talk to your kids about sex? and we could probably make a whole video on this, but I think if we touch upon it during this video, I found it very, I wish, again, this is me in hindsight, I wish that I had approached it differently now that I've lived through it. I feel like when I was in the moment, I was like, feeling like, oh my gosh, this is that mom moment. I can't screw it up. I'm about to approach this and I need to do it right. And I put so much pressure on myself that I felt very uncomfortable. Like, what if I screw up? What if I don't do this right? And I wish I had been in more comfortable. Like, I can sit here right now and I can sit there and talk about penises and vaginas and breasts and it's no big deal. But back then I was like nervous and I felt like if I could do it over again, I feel like I would have been way more factual and way more comfortable and just making it just a matter-of-fact conversation. Why does it have to be uncomfortable? Like, this is what you're going through.
So we've always just been really open about anything and everything. When the phones became part of his life and now hers, we talk about it is never, ever, ever appropriate for you to ask for photos, for you to make comments like, or to say these kinds of things. Don't do it. Then, and this is so hard for me because he is 15 and we are at that stage of starting to date, and having those conversations about what is and is not okay. And I've been very clear because I never want him to end up in a situation where he's accused of being inappropriate and just saying, you always ask, may I hold your hand? Would that be okay? There are things that I have seen him do or say, like, this was so sweet to me. He was giving one of his friends dating advice. And I was like, oh, so tell me, what does that dating advice look like? I was like,
that's wicked cute.
I loved it. And 14 and 15-year-olds, they're giving each other dating advice. So, but this is that open communication. And so I just say to him, so what does that advice look like? And he's like, well, you want to tell her something nice about herself every day. So when you see her, just say, your hair looks really pretty today, or that shirt looks really nice on you. I have known him to pick flowers and give them, as he's on his way to visit another. So, like, but those are the times that you see those little glimmers that you're like, wow, I really am doing the right thing by you. My daughter is not yet at a phase where we're having those really heavy conversations. So I try to keep it within reason as to where they are in their development. She's on they're actually both on the younger side of their grade level. Maturity-wise, she stopped playing with her American Girl dolls like last year. That last 5th grade into 6th grade. So she doesn't yet have a real interest in boys. She does have a crush. And I don't make her tell me who that is because I want to respect that privacy.
Right.
But have said, if you're interested in, talking about your crush, you're welcome to do that. Like, I can tell you silly things about when Daddy and I dated. Like those little things. Just having that open communication. Yeah.
And I think that it's one thing to plan out the conversation, but it's another thing to take opportunities as they arise and use humor to make the conversation more comfortable. And so anytime something comes up, I would always make a point of, making it funny. Like, when I did this, or, and so that it makes them realize they're not the only ones that have ever gone through it. But it also adds humor to it. Or if one of their friends has, gone through something or whatever, and the conversation comes up. So all I'm saying is, like, you can have those planned conversations, but you can also take advantage of those pop-up opportunities where you can just interject a comment or a quick conversation every now and then when those opportunities arise. Super helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I feel being consistent, being there for them and being respectful of their need for privacy, because they're going through some things that you and I aren't going to know about. Right. But giving them that safety to feel like they can come like, Mom, I need your help. Okay,
Yeah.
let's figure it out. Or having I really just need a little bit of time to think about this on my own.
Yeah, and then respecting them
Mm-hmm.
to think about it on their own, because believe me, you think that they're not, and they are.
Oh, they are.
They are.
They are.
Like, you think that they're blowing something off, and they've probably simmered on it for like 4 hours straight that
Mhm.
you just don't know about.
And they may be reaching out to their peers.
And they
For
will,
support
because
as well.
they're going to go through that phase where
Mhm.
we're all idiots. We don't know what we're talking about.
Honey, I've been stupid for 3 years.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And not only that, but their loyalties shift,
Mhm.
where they're going to be way more loyal to their buddies than they are to us. And again, I'm just going to tell you, that circles back around where now we'll get phone calls. My husband gets phone calls several times a day from either one of the kids. Hey, this happened. And
Yep.
then they're now asking for advice.
Mhm.
So it does circle around. So for all of those parents out there in the midst
We'll get there.
who've gone through it, I'm telling you, it's worth it. Stick with them. It does get better. They do end up amazing little human beings. So you just got to kind of struggle through it. Stay
My mom
positive.
used to tell
Stay
me,
supportive.
you were not the nicest person as a high schooler, but it's because you needed to find a way to leave the nest. And I try to keep that perspective. Not always going to be sunshine and roses.
It
But-
won't.
We're getting ready to be independent, and you got to try stuff out.
And it's scary.
Yep.
It's scary for those teenagers. And my son now will even say to me, I was an asshole. And I'm like, yeah, you were.
But I let you live through it.
I
And we came
know,
out and
I
look at
know.
what we have now.
I know, right? Absolutely. So any last thoughts? I feel like this has been a great conversation.
Me
I
too.
hope that lots of parents have learned from the conversation and some of these experiences.
I think we did it.
Oh, fabulous.
All
So
right.
until next time, thank you for joining us. And that was my conversation with Akaila. I hope that you have found value in it. And I want to thank Sai, who has been at my feet and actually is right at this moment. And he was being so good and quiet. And so, nice job not barking, Sai. I want to thank you guys for joining us. And I hope that you have found it helpful in surviving those teen years, which are really tricky. If you have found value, please go ahead and hit subscribe, hit share, hit like. I'm sure you've got friends who might benefit from some of these strategies and conversations. And if you hit subscribe, please know you're not going to get junk emails from me. It's completely free. It just shows support. And the more we have people subscribe, hit share, hit like, all of those things, it creates more visibility, which means more parents can hear our messages, which is going to be helpful to all of us in the long run. So all of that is super appreciated. And until the next chat, thank you for joining us.